What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Hog and Pony Show. I'm your host, Ira, and we're back with the head hog himself, DSP, here to listen to what he has to say about the Firaxis change of management and PC gaming as a whole. Granted, the story is a day out, and I did some research on this myself, and apparently the change of management was something that was an amicable split, and I don't know where he's getting his information from. I'm gonna guess he just read the headlines of this story without actually doing any research himself afterwards. Because if he had done anything, he would realize that like another senior executive was stepping up to fill the shoes of the people who left. And that Firaxis is not in trouble. They're actually working on their newest project, which is Civilization 7. And Civilization as a franchise is one of the most successful franchise of one of the most successful 4X franchises in existence. Because of one failure, though, he decides to go off on PC gaming. Let's just hear what he has to say before I lose my mind.
Let's take a look. A couple news stories. The first story, there's a huge shakeup at Firaxis. What is Firaxis Games? It is the game studio that has made the very traditional turn-based, strategy-based, grid-based RPGs. Think XCOM and all of its variants.
First of all, XCOM is not an RPG, it is a turn-based tactics game. He does not differentiate between RPGs and tactics games. Surprisingly enough, and also the huge shakeup thing was directly ripped from the article. He doesn't put his own spin on anything. I actually looked at the same article that he had seen. I think it was from Business Insider or something of the like.
The years, right? I remember first being introduced to XCOM when I went to E3 in 2012. That's right, E3 2012. XCOM was getting a big resurgence. And it was going to get ported to consoles for like the first time. So it was hot at the time. And then after that, they actually had a second game that was a shooter rather than a strategy game. Then they went back to their roots and they released a sequel to XCOM and expansions. Most recently, their biggest game was Marvel Midnight Suns, which sadly was a huge sales flop. A huge flop. They were banking on the fact that if they got the Marvel IP, they paid to use the Marvel characters, and they made a Marvel turn-based game like XCOM, that it would be a hit. It was not. It actually was hugely underperforming for them for what they spent, and it was reported that basically, even though it reviewed really well, was a huge loss for them. All right? So you might ask, gee, I wonder what's going to happen. Well, guess what? I'll tell you what's going to happen. The head director at Firaxis, his name is Jake Solomon. He's also the studio lead. Oh, wait, no. Jake Solomon is the director of the XCOM series and Midnight Suns. Also, there's someone else whose name isn't listed in this article. The developer studio head. They're both leaving the company. They're basically saying, bye-bye, I tap out. Enough, we're out of here. That's kind of sad. I guess, this is kind of the opposite of the BioWare situation. Okay? In the case of BioWare, this was a company that was very good at making a particular kind of game, correct? This very narrative-driven RPG with interesting characters and stories, a lot of choices on how you want to go about doing missions and dialogue. And you can play it this way, you can play it this way, you can be good, you can be bad, right? Paragon, Renegade, whatever. BioWare's very good at that, like the Mass Effect series, the Dragon Age series. Of course, previous games like they did like Knights of the Old Republic, right? Then they were forced to do a game that they didn't want to make and they don't know anything about in Anthem. Literally, their publisher said, do this game, we're forcing you to. And they actually told the publisher, well, we don't want to do that. And they said, too bad. They were forced to make this party looter shooter. It sucked. And
This actually wasn't the case. I hate pausing every 3 seconds to prove him wrong, but I actually did watch a lot of documentaries on Anthem, and Anthem was an internal project that not even the developers or even like the publishers knew what it was until like a few months before it was supposed to be shipped out. Like EA did not pressure BioWare to make Anthem. Anthem was something that they had decided on making internally after like literally doing nothing for like years and just having a name to go off of. It was a comedy of errors for BioWare, and it was an internal thing. EA really didn't have much of a say in it. But of course, like he likes to like blame the publishers like most people do, but in this case, Anthem was mostly responsible. Like the people who were responsible were the people at BioWare themselves, not EA. And even then, I'm not sure what he's going on about with the comparison between the two, because for the most part, EA does this thing of chewing up studios and spending the money after putting them on games that they're not really supposed to be put on, like they did that with Visceral. But in this case, that was not really what's happening. Take-Two Interactive did not really force Firaxis to make this game. Firaxis themselves wanted the license; they wanted to do it themselves. And yes, he is right that it was a sales flop. I'll get into my own theories on it once he discusses his whole spiel about like it being a PC like friendly release or something like that. And I'm also keeping the comments on so I can read some of them as well.
And it flopped huge. And now, so many years later, we're still waiting for the next big game from BioWare. Kind of the studio's been in limbo for a million years and hasn't put out a good game because of the producers being idiots, right? To be honest, EA is stupid. I don't think anyone's going to dispute that. Firaxis is a little different, because unlike BioWare, it's the opposite situation. They've been allowed to just make the games they like, with the exception of that spin-off shooter game that was in the XCOM universe that basically got critically panned. I played it and I thought it was kind of meh. I didn't hate it, but I guess a lot of people hated that game. But for the most part, Firaxis has just focused on making the XCOM style games, right? So what went wrong? If they made XCOM Enemy Unknown, and then there was the sequel, if they panned them or ported them to all consoles, and now they got this big IP with Midnight Suns, what went wrong? I mean, maybe I'm wrong here, and you guys could definitely, give me feedback on this, perhaps.
They do give you feedback, and you tell your audience that they're wrong whenever they give you feedback. You dismiss their opinions as being basically PC Defense Squad the entire rest of your segment on this game. But as far as what happened with Midnight Suns, it was a huge, basically perfect storm of failure in regards to what was happening with them. One, the Marvel interest in the Marvel license was on its way out. People don't care about Marvel like they used to back before Infinity War. The Infinity War movie, and specifically Endgame, after Endgame, Marvel interest kind of waned, especially because it keeps getting oversaturated with so many shows and movies that people have to keep up with in order to stay abreast of what's going on in that universe. Midnight Suns is no different. It's just one more thing to keep up with in terms of Marvel. You need to if you want to know what's going on. Technically it isn't its own thing, but still people are getting tired of Marvel. Two, the release window of the game had it going up against a really stiff competition. And three, it's a turn-based tactics game. They don't tend to sell all that well. They have their audiences, and they do really well with those audiences. And if they release at the right time, like Fire Emblem Engage did earlier this year, when there was nothing going on, Fire Emblem Engage was the best-selling physical game in Japan the week of its release, and that is a turn-based tactics game. Then they do fine. But because Midnight Suns was going against stuff like God of War, I believe, and some other games coming out towards the end of the year, it was going to flop. It was just releasing at a really, really bad time with a license that nobody cared about in a genre that is very niche to begin with. It has nothing to do with the platforms that it was released on.
This game formula is something that used to work. It's considered more of a retro formula. This is something that, back in the day, for strategy-based PC gamers, this was all the rage, right? It was huge. But now, the gaming landscape is more than just PC. For you to have a really giant dynamic hit on your hands, you need to have a game that now appeals across all platforms, correct? You need to have a game that's going to be a hit no matter, where it's released. And if you're telling me that you're going to play these strategy-based RPGs and they're amazing on PC, but they're not as good on console because they're using a gamepad, it's different from clicking with the mouse and keyboard, and it's strategy-based, so, again, it's almost like a sim-style combat. You say, oh, well, that's better. The PC crowd likes that. I get that. But maybe, did you ever think, perhaps, and maybe I know heads will roll when I say this, so please bear in mind that I say this with great restraint, but also hopefully with a great amount of consideration and intelligence. Perhaps
there was no intelligence here. Also, if anybody's ever played XCOM 1 or Enemy Unknown and XCOM 2 on consoles, they work fine just on consoles. His entire argument here hinges on the fact that the PC gaming is typically the way to play these games because of how you control the game with the keyboard and mouse, with hotkeys and with mouse selection and mouse movement. That isn't really the case. You can play XCOM 2 perfectly fine on a console. It was actually built with console in mind. Same thing with XCOM Enemy Unknown when it first was released. That's why a lot of reviewers at the time actually did not like it, because they were hardcore into PCs and they were like, oh, these are all things that compromise that we had to work around for the sake of the consoles. Which is why they didn't like the fact that you could only have move and attack with units in the first XCOM. I think they carried over into XCOM 2 as well. You don't have action points anymore. Movement is very much grid based as opposed to just space based. You can move this many feet or whatever. You can move this many yards. It was very, very much on the grid. And in general, there weren't as many things that you could do with your units in the original XCOM Enemy Unknown as you could do in XCOM UFO Defense, the original XCOM game for PC that came out over 20 years ago in the 90s. That is why people didn't like it on PC at first. And then they realized the game is still really good. It's just, it's a bit simplified. And that doesn't mean the simplifications are bad, but it means more people can play it on a console. It made unit selection easier. It made movement easier. It made ability selection easier. And even with the mouse, you can do that very, very easily with just hotkeys or whatever. But with the controller, you can still do it pretty easily. It's just a simple, a hit of your trigger or whatever. I haven't played the games on console, but I do know people who play PC games with controllers, and XCOM plays perfectly fine with a controller. If that's his point, he's really, really off the mark. And he played XCOM on the consoles before. Like, he actually did play them, I believe, because he can't play anything on his PC. His PC, it sucks. So he can't play anything on it.
PC gaming is on the decline. Oh my God, I said it. Oh, I shouldn't have said that. No, I shouldn't have said it. No, that's it. The PC elite, they're coming for me. I shouldn't have said that. Oh my God. No.
Gerald Allen in this chat, that's a terrible take.
I can't believe I said it. That's it. The master race is outside my house. I can hear them throwing Molotov cocktails at the window right now. All right. Okay, listen, just please bear with me for a second.
Yeah, his chat is not having it, by the way. There are some people who are joking about it with the PC Master Race bullshit, but a lot of people are actually saying, like, yeah, his take is really shit and he doesn't know.
I used to be a PC gamer. I used to build PCs, all right?
That is a lie. He's never built PCs. He may have built one PC and he built it terribly. If he did build a PC, he would already have like a good PC for his streaming setup. Instead, he runs a server PC that he had built for him for $3,000 at the time that does not run games very well or even like captures very well, believes that this standard is how all PCs operate because he's fucking ignorant, and then like has the audacity to say like, oh, I can't upgrade because I'll lose all my presets. So he does not know how to build PCs. He does not know how to operate a PC. He does not know how to game on a PC. Otherwise, he'd be using Windows 10 or Windows 11 if he's fucking masochistic in that case. But still, he doesn't know what he's talking about because he doesn't play on PCs anymore. And when he did, he played on them poorly like he does everything else. He can only understand consoles because consoles are plug and play. That's really it. That's probably why he doesn't play on PC at all anymore and why he always declines people saying, hey, play on a PC. He doesn't want to because he doesn't know how. And taking time to figure out how would require effort instead of just plugging shit into a capture card and saying play. Like, that's all he does at this point, and that's why he prefers consoles.
In the early 2000s to mid 2000s, I loved it. Why? Because you could play games that blew away anything that was on consoles. The graphics were absolutely outstanding. Full 60 frames per second, amazing levels of control with mouse and keyboard. Games like Unreal Tournament, Quake 3 Arena, I could go on and on. Games like Deus Ex. They just were so amazing back then.
I don't believe he played any of these. He might have been around people who played these games.
Hilarious because that was the era. That was the era when Halo and Halo 2 were huge, absolutely huge on the original Xbox console. All my friends were telling me, Phil, have you played Halo yet? And I was like, what are you talking about? Halo? Yeah, you got to get an Xbox, you got to play Halo. All right, and I'm like, seriously? Why would I play Halo? Do you know what I'm playing? Have you seen it? And I actually had a friend who was a console gamer, and I had him come over my house. Okay,
I actually want to point this out. He has people in the chat who are subscribers or members, and Niana is actually putting up a really good take on this one, which is why I want to comment on his chat people as well, because I am one of the people who say that not everybody who watches Phil, like who unironically watches him and supports him, is stupid. Like, they may be stupid with their money to support this fat fuck, but they are not like stupid people in general. And right here we have Niana with a comment that says, that's just not true. More and more people are moving to PC, especially because of PC Game Pass. Like, why would anyone own an Xbox? This is true. Game Pass exists on PC, and while there is a different library on Xbox than there is on the PC, there really is no reason to own a console, specifically an Xbox console, unless you really, really are adamant about not owning a PC or not wanting to deal with the PC, or you just can't afford one. Like, legitimately. And even then, I'll go into another point that he makes later on about like his shit take on how PCs are compared to other different platforms. But still, that is like probably one of the best things I've seen in this chat, that is like, yeah, people are migrating over to PC because of Game Pass, and Game Pass's availability on PC makes it the preferred platform, where Xbox is like a secondary platform. In most cases, what most people have in terms of if they're really into like any sort of games is they have a PC and they have a Switch. In some cases, they also have a PS5 for its exclusives, but even that's on the way out because Sony has been porting its exclusives over to PC, either through the Epic Game Store or on Steam. Returnal just recently got a release on the PC as well. So there really is no reason to own a console unless you specifically want that ease of use, or you're looking for exclusives in the case of the Switch, because you can't really play any of Nintendo's games on the PC because Nintendo has all of its IP under lock and key.
House, and I had 2 network gaming PCs, all right, one in each upstairs room in my parents' house. And we sat there and we played for 4 straight hours. We played Unreal Tournament. He was so blown away. He was like, I don't want to play Halo anymore. So I just want to play this, but he couldn't afford it.
Have you played a PC game in the last 10 years? No, he hasn't.
Because Halo's slow-paced, the graphics are terrible.
He maybe played it once. He maybe played like once.
It was, okay, it's competitive.
Like 5 years ago.
On an Xbox at the time. PC gaming was just so next level. It was. But what we've seen over the years is a steady decline in the ability of PCs to outperform consoles. What we're seeing is the consoles get more and more powerful, and the PCs remain more powerful, but the gap is way, used to be the gap.
Your
like
evidence
this.
is all anecdotal,
Now
and
the
you're
gap's
not a
like
PC
this.
gamer,
And
so
also
you have
because
no
I
idea
think
how
PCs
busy it
are
is.
real
That
close
is
to PS5
exactly the fact here.
performance, while others probably are way out here, okay? Now, the difference here is that back then, in the back of the day, the game developers were developing directly just for PC. You know, Unreal Tournament didn't run on console. That was the second-hand thought that we'll port that later, right? So these games were absolutely outstanding, groundbreaking, amazing experiences on PC. Now, whenever you get these games, they got to be cross-platform. Why? I hate to say it, the money isn't there on PC unless you're going to release an MMO or you're going to release one of these team-based online game-as-a-service shooters. You're not going to make enough money to support long-term support of a PC game. You have to have that game be cross-platform and to jump into the console market as well. And what happens? We'll take a look at games like Callisto Protocol. Take a look at games like Hogwarts Legacy. These games don't perform as well on PC. They just don't. And you can argue, well, that's the game developer's fault. I mean, you're right. But what it is the game developers are seeing where their primary audience are. And more often than not today, they're seeing that their primary audience is console, not PC. You understand?
This is not true at all. In terms of how they develop things in the front and like console framework, the reason why there are far less issues when developing things for a console than there are on a PC is because for PC they have to account for pretty much every single setup known to man, and sometimes people have really, really wonky setups which cause a lot of like conflicts internally with the hardware. So things don't run as smoothly as they're supposed to, and things can fuck up. This happens a lot. Like with certain things, like certain frameworks or certain like pieces of software, they just don't run well, and that is on the developer, but usually they're like fixing like a day one patch of some kind. When you're working within the framework of a console, you don't have that problem. Console framework is basically just, you make it for this specific kind of hardware, and it will run because consoles are mass produced. It is not because they're spending less time on PCs to make it run, because they're spending more time on PCs to make it run than they are on consoles. Once they're done with the console ports, they're freaking done with it. To make it run on a PC, you have to make it run like pretty much every kind of PC that exists, including his out-of-date, like slow as fuck, like horrible Windows 8.1 running ass. It has to run on that kind of thing. Most games run on Windows 7 or above. A lot of them these days don't. You need 10 or 11 to run, but still, like if something is like wrong with a PC port, it usually is because they did some improper testing for it, not because they don't care about it. He is one of these people, and this is a pattern of behavior that I've seen with him a lot, that assumes malice when it's just incompetence in a lot of ways. It's not they don't care about PC, it's just that like they didn't have time to do things with it. Like the game needed to be shipped out, and you can always fix things in post, which they do. As far as I know, Callisto Protocol and Hogwarts Legacy do run well on PC. They just don't run well under certain conditions, and those conditions have now been accounted for in post-release patches. The only time, and even this is even the case with like something like Cyberpunk 2077, on the PC it ran fine for the most part. There were glitches, but there were glitches across every single platform. The platform that it ran the worst on were last-gen consoles. It did not run well on the Xbox One, and it did not run well on the PS4. On the PS5 and Xbox Series and on PC, Cyberpunk 2077 ran just fine, like all the other glitches that were present on all platforms aside. They didn't have as many performance issues on the PC as it did on the consoles, and I think of the consoles, it only ran best on the Xbox Series for whatever reason, and that's just up to them about how that happened. But it's because they just can't account for every single permutation of a PC that exists, so they try to account for most of them. And then the ones that get they got missed when the game is launched, they get fixed in post. That's just how it happens. That happens with every single PC. And the thing is, even if it does get messed up, you can sort of tweak the experience so that it runs fine. You can turn down the graphical settings, you can turn off shaders, you can turn off all sorts of settings in order to get it to run well, and try to figure out like what's going on with it. It's the idea of basically just what you see is what you get with a console, versus if you know how to like manipulate things in the PC with like files and stuff, or just settings, you can get things to run just as well or better with less powerful hardware. But it's kind of hard to have less powerful hardware than a console at this point when you're running a PC. And also, people in the chat are still.
I'm not saying the PC market's dying. I'm saying it's time to open our eyes and realize the game landscape is different.
Yeah,
it just is. All right. What is the best selling game every year? Call of Duty.
Jesus Christ.
Where the most copies sell? Console. Okay. Now, all that being said, take a look at Firaxis. This is a game company that makes a game for.
One Button Dash in his chat. The sales of PS5 and Xbox One disprove your theory. that's for different reasons. That's because there was a hardware shortage and nobody could actually buy the consoles. So people started switching to PCs basically out of desperation. It isn't because like people didn't want to buy PS5s, because as far as I know, and this is my personal history with the PS5, as soon as PS5s were available, they sold out. Like for months. It like only recently have I started to see PS5s on shelves. Same thing with Xbox Series. Xbox Series would fly off shelves just because there weren't that many on the shelves to begin with. So the console sales in that case are bad because of a product shortage, not because of like a low demand for them. So there's like a low install base just because of low product. And as a result, people started to migrate more to PC, and I believe that's why more things like Game Pass made it to PC, as well as more PS5 exclusives are making their way to PC in some form. So they want people to play these games and to buy these games, even if they don't have the hardware to run them. That the game was exclusive to at that point. And even now, because of that, now you're seeing an abundance of the console on the shelves. Like, why would I buy a PS5 when all the PS5's exclusives are on PC now? You just don't want to do it. Like, even now, like, if I had known Returnal was going to come to PC when I bought Returnal, like, months ago, I probably would not have purchased it.
Franchise, XCOM, primarily played on PC, okay? Primarily played. It's a great, great game on PC. But I tried playing XCOM on console, and it didn't feel great. To have it using it with a gamepad as opposed to mouse and keyboard, okay? It doesn't have a giant fan base on console.
On Decline isn't dying out.
Well
Phil likes to play these semantics games. Sorry, I interject.
How are you going to survive in the modern gaming landscape? And so when you get a game like Midnight Suns, it's like everything was against this game. All right, first of all, you released it in the absolute busiest time of the year between games like Call of Duty and God of War. What were you thinking? What on earth were you thinking? You thought that your XCOM knockoff game with Marvel characters was going to sell amongst the biggest, most hype releases of the year. That was just a boneheaded move. There was no excuse. That was a terrible, move by whoever made that decision. Because who knows? You don't know if it was actually for Access or someone else who finances the game who makes those decisions. But that was one of the worst release timings I think they could have possibly done for this style of game.
Typically, market research of this kind is held by the publisher, so it would be Take-Two and Firaxis' decision to release the game at this time, whenever Firaxis was done. So trying to make the Christmas rush definitely did hinder it. But in the past, usually that's when most games sell anyway. So having your game available during that time is not necessarily a boneheaded move, as he likes to claim, especially because it is nothing like whatever else was being sold at the time. It is not a first-person shooter. It is not an action-adventure game. It is a turn-based tactics game. So people who are looking for a turn-based tactics game would be like more in the market for that kind of thing. It would sell to those people specifically around that time because they don't want to get the other games. You can't make that kind of comparison. It's not like you're trying to release Modern Warfare. Like, you're not trying to release like a Medal of Honor at the same time as Modern Warfare, because that actually is like releasing against your competition and trying to outsell them, as opposed to trying to stagger the releases in that case, which would be the smart move there. But I think it's also the case that the only other game at the time that was releasing in that genre was Mario plus Rabbids. And that had released a few months prior. And then you also had Fire Emblem Engage coming out a few months later as well. So this game did cater to those people who were into that kind of thing, but specifically not Nintendo players. And that's fine. That's actually a really good strategy. It's just that nobody cared about Marvel at this point. And they were all busy playing like other things. Specifically God of War, I believe, was the big release around the time of Midnight Suns.
All right, that's number one. Number two, all right, it's just XCOM again, and people are like, okay, it's a little different because we're watered down XCOM, we're casual. That's fine. So what? It's XCOM again. You have an established market for that style of game. It's a PC market. It's primarily PC gamers. There aren't droves of console gamers buying XCOM games. So when you release this game, even if you license Marvel, you're still basically just making a variation of what you're good at for the same market. You see, take a look at BioWare. They crossed over. They were making PC games, Knights of the Old Republic, etc. But those games were ported, and now they've crossed over. When they sell a game, BioWare, Mass Effect, Dragon Age, it sells everywhere in droves. XCOM games do not. So for Firaxis, looking at
Where the fuck is he getting this data from? Mass Effect was an Xbox exclusive for the longest time. Only recently, with the Mass Effect Remastered Trilogy, did it actually get a multi-platform release. Mass Effect 3 was like the last game in the main series, and that got a multi-platform release. But because it was multi-platform, the other two were not. They had to include like a prologue minigame segment so that people could create the shepard that they wanted to without transferring save files that didn't exist for the console they bought it for. Like, Mass Effect was an Xbox exclusive. For the most part, BioWare's games were Xbox exclusives. They were on PC for a time, and then they made Xbox exclusive games, specifically for the 360. And then after that, they go to multi-platform. Like I said, the last game that they had come out with, which is technically not a game, it's a re-release, was Mass Effect Trilogy Remastered. That was a multi-platform release. Comes out on anything except the Switch, like most games. And it was fine. But it was basically selling to a market that had already bought the game, basically. Mass Effect was already selling very, very well because it was released on the most popular platform at the time, which was the Xbox 360.
What they're doing, all right, basically set themselves up for failure. They put all their eggs in the one basket, and the basket filled to the top with financing and everything for this Marvel game. It releases, it completely tanks. No one buys it or plays it. All the reviewers said it was great. I believe them. I liked XCOM Enemy Unknown many years ago. I thought it was an outstanding game, but you know, it appeals to a certain audience. Even me, like, I like the game, and this is over 10 years ago that I played XCOM Enemy Unknown. I couldn't even do a full playthrough of it because my audience got bored.
Marvel is oversaturated with bad games and movies. It's not because PC's on the decline. Yes, that is true. And this is from Bateman Gaming. Not sure if it's the real one, but still. Good point there.
So how do you expect that game to appeal to a widespread audience? You're not. You're going to appeal to your same hardcore audience, right? There's never going to be a mainstream crossover hit. So that's the problem here, all right? That is. And again, it's hilarious because we've got people who are offended in my chat. Oh my God, what a bad thing. Why do you not face facts? Why do we keep pretending like this is the golden age of PC gaming and that everything does better on PC? It's not the case anymore. Literally.
They are facing facts. You're the one who's in denial here because you're a console snob. Like, as much as I like to meme on the PC game master race as everybody else does, you're a console snob. You legitimately think console better than everything else because you're too stupid to figure out how to work a PC. That's legitimately it. If you actually figure out how to work a PC, you'd understand why the platform is much better than the console at this point.
No exaggeration. The vast majority of games on PC that are cross-platform run like shit on PC now. It takes them weeks to months to get patched to even run well. So
it takes like a day. It takes like a day to 2 weeks.
This argument doesn't make any sense in 2023. It doesn't, okay? It's just... But people are just so... Anytime that you say this about PC gaming, people get so upset. They're so upset. It's absolutely ridiculous. Anyway... Whatever. I'm just, I shake my head. Whatever, man. You believe what you want to believe. You live in your bubble. So it is people live in a bubble of like, PC is the greatest and we are always the greatest. We'll always be the...
You people live in a bubble. Real ironic considering he never fucking leaves his own house unless it's to go out and get fucking food.
Greatest and ignore all outside factors. PC is good. You know what's really going to godsmack PC gamers? When they realize, get this. Hold on, everyone. Everyone, brace yourselves. Are you ready?
Oh yeah, he's clowning so hard right now.
Mobile games are way bigger than anything on PC. Okay, no.
Okay, this is where I was going to like talk more about this shit. Yeah, of course mobile games are on PC. Don't you fuckers have phones? Like, that makes sense. Most mobile games are better. Most mobile games sell better on PC, or not necessarily sell better, but they have more of an install base because everybody has a fucking phone, including this asshole. Hey, DSP, why don't you talk about how much money you spent on WWE Champions and how lucrative it is for Scopely that you spend like $5,000 a month on those fucks. Besides that, the one thing that I would like to comment on in regards to this is that he also doesn't understand the fact that PCs are running off of it, like not PCs, but consoles. Both the PS5 and the Xbox Series are running off of old PC chipsets. The reason why there was a shortage of those things is because people kept buying them up and you couldn't produce any more of them because the other parts were being used for things like, I don't know, crypto mining or whatever. But the PS5 and the Xbox Series are both running off of very old PC chipsets that were obsolete before the consoles were even made. If you get a PC, not even like a top of the line $5,000 gaming monster rig or whatever, you just get like a basic PC that costs roughly the same amount as a console. Like, you'd spend $500 on a gaming PC. It will be more powerful than the current consoles, because the consoles run on outdated chipsets. Legitimately, the consoles are very much underpowered, highly specified PCs. But of course, he doesn't realize that. You can actually plug a keyboard and mouse into a console and it will run. You can plug a keyboard and mouse into a PS5 and use it as a keyboard when entering information and it will run. It will work just fine. You might not be able to play the game with it because the game doesn't really recognize keyboard and mouse input, but you can actually type with it. You can type with it. There are actually specifically keyboards and mice to work with consoles, but they're just USB that have already have the drivers installed to work with the console in them. You don't really need much else. Like, this is like the biggest flaw in his argument, that he doesn't understand what consoles are at this point. Before, they used to have very, very specified architecture that couldn't be replicated with the PC. And in most cases, you had to have a console because the consoles were completely different from like a PC, and PC gaming was its own thing because of the architecture. Most consoles were black box technology, basically. You couldn't really emulate it. And then eventually we cracked it. Eventually people cracked it. And so now you have Super Nintendo emulators on PC. You have pretty much emulators for every single major console that exists on PC, except for, I think, the Vita. The Vita is still a black box. And possibly the Switch. Switch is easier to emulate on PC because it's also running on an outdated tablet chipset. But it's not running off like a PC chipset. But still, you can emulate Switches on the PC. You can emulate pretty much anything on the PC at this point because that's what consoles are. They're just PCs. All of them are. And he doesn't get that. And yes, of course, we know that because the reason why mobile games have a bigger base or like they make more money is because they have a higher install base. Nearly everybody has a fucking phone because you need a phone. You need a smartphone in today's modern landscape to just basically function and to do jobs, to actually work, to go to work, to do your job, to stay in communication with coworkers and family and friends, of which this man has none. So why does he have a phone? Oh yeah, to play WWE Champions. You need a phone. You just do. And for the most part, people install games on their phone to like play on their downtime when commuting. And even then, there are emulators on PC for mobile phones. You can play every single game that's exclusive to Android using Nox or BlueStacks. It is that fucking simple because it still all just runs off of PC architecture, just put in a different package.
I gotta take a break. I'll see you guys later. I gotta get out of here now. I'm out of here. Dodge the bullets.
How can someone who has a PC that doesn't even run a stream barely know anything about gaming exactly?
Okay, anyway. Oh shit, I clicked the wrong thing. Anyway. But again, don't approach these people with like factual arguments because again, it's just a weird PC bubble where people don't want to hear the truth that PC gaming is not what it used to be. You can't.
Okay, I think I'm done with him at this point, but you get the idea. He doesn't know much about PC gaming. He doesn't know much about how sales work. He doesn't know much about console install bases. He doesn't know much about like pretty much anything about how games are sold or how games are marketed. And most importantly, how people engage with games in terms of like their preferred platform. Like, there's nothing wrong with owning a console, but as people have pointed out in his chat, mostly due to part shortages, console sales of this generation have been incredibly weak, and more people have been migrating towards the PC. It's just that simple. It is that simple to understand that he doesn't get it, because he likes to reinforce the idea that he's always right in terms of this, and he did this several times over the course of the rest of his fucking copecast or whatever you want to call this thing, that every time somebody came to him with like information like, oh, you could buy Hogwarts Legacy for cheaper using a key seller, which is true. You can buy games cheaper than retail price on a key seller. He tends to believe that is all due to things like G2A and Kinguin and all that other stuff that are basically gray markets, and that isn't the case. You can just buy them off of legit key sellers because they work directly with the publisher, get supplied directly from the publisher, and can sell without a middleman being involved, such as Steam, because Valve and Epic are middlemen in terms of selling games. But if like a game was being sold directly from the publisher or the developer, you can get them on the cheap, possibly for free, and then just activate them on Steam and they run just fine. But of course, he doesn't know that because it doesn't research anything about how to buy games or get games on PC, yet he expects his audience to buy games for him, or at least buy credits for games so he can buy them on his console. He just doesn't like to do work in that regard either, or make deals with publishers. But yeah, I'm done. I'm done. This is running long. I'm losing my goddamn mind here. I'll try to be shorter in talking about this kind of stuff, but this is a long segment anyway. And even at double speed, there was a lot to take in. So I will see you all sometime in the next video. Bye, guys.